one day I woke up and he was yelling, like he was screaming in my ear, and he was like, "You've got to write your book. It is time to write your story. You need to tell your story of, triumph over the tribulations and how, even though you've been given a pretty rotten hand, you've made it into something beautiful." And I like to call it beautifully broken, and the broken blessings that came with life. So, I was abandoned as a child on multiple occasions. I had to support my family. I was bullied and teased and tormented growing up through school. And then I found myself in, abusive relationship after abusive relationship until finally I was in that really bad one in Colorado where I was beaten and sexually assaulted. And, something inside me just, it snapped. The little girl inside me was like, this is not how life is supposed to be. We're supposed to be loved unconditionally. We're supposed to be innocent and, fun and all of that. And so, I snapped, I kicked him out. And then I decided, after that if I was ever in a position to help others, that I would. And I found myself in that position last year when I decided to write my book. I was like, okay, God, I'll write it. Like, just back off, I'll write my story.
Hi, welcome to the Empowered Woman Podcast. This is a place for you to learn from inspiring women how to empower yourself through self-love. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Marta Spurk, and I'm your host, triplet mom, woman empowerment coach, and all things motivation extraordinaire.
Should you write a book? Should you read someone's memoir? Someone you know personally? I had never read a memoir by someone I know personally until I met today's guest, my friend and badass, Erin BAER. We talked about her life story, her book, and how it's been helping her spread her message of empowerment and grow her business. We also announced some pretty exciting news about partnering up together to empower women. Let's get right to it. Hi, Erin. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Marta. I'm so glad to be here.
Yes. So quick backstory, as I usually do. I connected with Erin. She's actually in Denver, in Colorado, and I connected with her because of my workshops. When I was able to do the live workshops, at least. And it was really, really nice to learn more about her story, especially after reading her book. So she will tell you, she wrote this amazing book called Beaten to Badass, From Beaten to Badass. And I just love the name of her business and everything that she stands for. And learning more about her story, I saw how our message of empowerment for women really intersected and how we could collaborate. And we've been talking for a while, especially during quarantine and exchanging ideas here and there. But I do want you to tell us more about your business and how you got started, where the idea came from. Tell us how your book has been helping you in grow your business, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I moved to Colorado, 12 years ago, and I was in a completely different industry, had a completely different dream in mind. I moved here to follow my dreams in the golf world, and I had a dream job for the PGA and was doing my thing, and that's what I was focused on. And then I got into a relationship that did not turn out so well, and that actually derailed me from my dream and my pursuit in the golf industry. And I actually landed in a gym, scrubbing toilets and cleaning the bathrooms, the dirty work that nobody wants to do, but I needed a job. And I saw this woman walk into the gym, and she just was everything I wanted. She was fit, she was beautiful, she was healthy, she was confident, and I had to know her secret. So I went into this trainer's office and I was like, I want to look like her. And so he told me what she was doing, and she was getting ready for a figure competition. I was like, oh, what? A figure competition. So I was like, well, I want to do that. And I had just gotten out of this really bad abusive relationship, and I needed to take control back of my life. And so I was like, let's do it. And I actually started on April 1st of 2009.
Wow.
And so I started working out. I followed everything that my coach told me to do by eating. I wrote everything down. I counted every ounce of water. I counted every time I went to the bathroom, like you name it, I journaled about it. And so I then had to find another job as well. So I was working at the gym. I was also working at a bank, as a teller, and people just started noticing the changes in my body and my attitude and the things I was doing for myself. And they were like, oh, wow, what are you doing? And I explained, no, I'm getting ready for my first competition. And they're like, wait, you're going to stand on stage in an itty bitty sparkly bikini and 5-inch heels? I said, yes, I am. And they're like, well, can you train me, but not like that? And I said, sure, I guess so. So I went ahead and dived in getting my certification because I didn't want to just do it without knowing the backstory of everything that needed to happen. I wanted to make sure I was legit and certified and insured. And so I just started, with a couple of my friends and started training them. And I realized, with my own transformation, how much of a mental shift it was, how much was involved in the mindset. And it wasn't just about the physical. It wasn't just about the diet, but it was about, the heart and the soul and your mental muscle. Mm-hmm. And so I started coaching other people, and I did my first 2 competitions in 2009, and I placed really well, and I got very addicted to a healthy lifestyle. And so I started picking up on my own clients and training them on the side. And fast forward 8 years later, I did 8 shows. Wow. 8 shows. And I decided to retire in 2016 to go on a different kind of journey. I decided to go on an infertility journey. And everything that I've learned through my life, with before the abuse, and then in the abuse, and then after, taught me a lot of different things. And so I just really had to learn how to be mentally strong and love on myself instead of beating myself up, because I've allowed so many people in my life to beat me up. Mm-hmm. I just thought that was the way it was supposed to do. Right. It was supposed to be, oh, this is how I'm supposed to be treated. So I guess I'm supposed to treat myself this way without kindness and self-love and self-empowerment. Like, this is it. Right. And so with the abuse, when I got out of that, if you want to learn more, you can read it in my book, but it's really hard to talk about sometimes. And I don't want that to be the main focus. But I just learned that I really had to dive deep, and I had to be kind to myself, because if I wasn't going to be kind to myself, then I was going to allow others to be mean to me. Yeah. And it was just, a horrible cycle. And so last year, after a devastating loss of my first pregnancy, I was sitting in my office, and, God's told me to write my book a couple of times. And I'm like, no, go away. I don't know what you're talking about, dude. Mm-hmm. You might be the Father in heaven or whatever, but you don't know what you're talking about. And so one day I woke up and he was yelling, he was screaming in my ear, and he was like, you've got to write your book. It is time to write your story. You need to tell your story of, triumph over the tribulations, and how, even though you've been given a pretty rotten hand, you've made it into something beautiful. And I like to call it beautifully broken, mm-hmm. and the broken blessings that came with life. So, I was abandoned as a child on multiple occasions. I had to support my family. I was bullied and teased and tormented growing up through school. And then I found myself in, abusive relationship after abusive relationship, until finally I was in that really bad one in Colorado where I was beaten and sexually assaulted. And, something inside me just, it snapped. The little girl inside me was like, this is not how life is supposed to be. We're supposed to be loved unconditionally. We're supposed to be innocent and, fun and all of that. And so, I snapped, I kicked him out. And then I decided, after that if I was ever in a position to help others, that I would. And I found myself in that position last year when I decided to write my book. I was like, okay, God, I'll write it. Just back off, I'll write my story. So I sat at my desk every day for 5.5 months, and I wrote my little heart out, and I just let it come out. And as I was writing my story, I decided to go ahead and basically broadcast it on social media that I was writing my book and how many words I've, had written. And I shared some excerpts with people because it kept me accountable. It kept me, on the path to telling my story and actually getting it in print. And so the more I told my story, the more people would reach out to me, and they were like, me too. Wow, you were there too. And I think it gave other people hope. And I wasn't really focused on that. I was just focused, I got to get the story out. I got to write it. And then, with every book sold, I knew that I could give a portion back to those impacted by domestic violence and sexual assault. I promised myself 12 years prior, 10 years, I think it was about 10 or 11 years ago, because after the abuse, I was like, I will, I'll make a difference if I'm ever in that position. And so I promised myself. And so it all really started last January when I sat down to write my book, I was just like, okay, we're going for this. We're doing this. Like, I have to hold myself accountable, but I also have to let people know that, you're not alone, and showing yourself grace, and your circumstances don't define you. You're a badass. You just have to get back up. And, it's not saying that, you're better than anybody else. It's not saying that you don't have hard times and you don't fall down, you don't get scraped or bruised up, but you're not in this alone. There are a lot of people that are cheering you on, but you have to cheer yourself on first.
Yes.
Because if you don't even get up to make that first step, then why is anybody else going to come and pick you up? I mean, they have their own battles and baggage that they're carrying around. And I think that's important. I think people need to know that circumstances don't define you, but it does come back to what you preach a lot about, self-empowerment, self-love, and it's not selfish.
Right. So. And that was one of the things that I was going to ask. How did it turn into your book being something that you could help give back to the community and not just be something for you to share your story and empower people too? But there's this added element there that I really love. And the other question I was going to ask is, did the name of the book and the name of your business come before or after writing the book, or during? How did that go?
So that's tricky, because I actually had a different title. I really had a title that I was like set on, because I was a bodybuilder for 8 years. So like just grinding it, with the weights in the weight room. And so I had this different title. I was like, Growth Through Grinding. And I thought it was just this powerful title. And I told my dad about it, and he's like, it's okay, but I think you need to sit on it. And I was like, well, and then he sent me to a friend, and his friend was like, that title sucks and you won't sell a copy. And I was just devastated. Aww. Like my heart was broken because I was so set on this title. I was like, My Journey of Fortitude. And I was like, it sucks. Like, it was just devastating to me. And so I struggled with it, and I couldn't, I was told that like 3 words for your title is like the best. Like those are usually bestsellers. And I was like, man, I don't know what to do. So I sent my synopsis to a friend of mine, and I was like, hey, could you do me a favor and read this? Like, I don't know what to call it. And she goes, well, send it to me and I'll look at it. I said, okay, great. So I sent it to her, and she goes, Girl, Beaten a Badass. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's genius. Like, it never even occurred to me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's amazing. So it stuck. And then when I was going through the process, they added from, because it's got the 2 in there. So they really wanted to say where you're from to where you're going. And then I just knew. So I had to find something to motivate me while I was writing my book. And all these companies were reaching out to me about bracelets. And I was like, I can make my own. So I actually made a bracelet. And I put it on my wrist, and I was like, wrist motivation. It had purple in it because that's the color for domestic abuse and violence survivors. And so I put it on my wrist, and I posted it on Facebook, didn't think anything of it. And this was on March 8th or March 6th or something. Mm. And I was like, wrist motivation, because I had been writing my book for 2 months, and everybody wanted one. Everybody's like, well, can you make me one, but can you make it with something different? I was like, sure. So that's how the company started, because I was writing my book. Okay. And I had wrist motivation. It all started with a bracelet, which is pretty funny. And so I put the name in, with Colorado Department of Labor. I was like, okay, Beaten a Badass on March 8th was born. And then I already had my title on my book. So I was writing my book, and I was selling bracelets, and I started this whole company. And I was like, I can give a portion back of these bracelets. Like, I don't have to wait for my book to come out. I can start giving now. And so we were able to give over over $400 just in, bracelets and mugs and workout towels and golf classes I was doing back to those impacted by domestic violence and sexual assault. So the book was getting written, but the business was growing and becoming a thing. And then it just kind of all came together. So it was really exciting. I actually didn't come up with my title on my own. A friend of mine, and then my publisher helped me. But it works. I came up with my subtitle. Which is My Journey of Broken Blessings and How I Became My Own Hero. And I wrote like 20 different things. Like, what is it that I want to get across? And so I wrote 20 different things, and I circled 3 of them, and I sent them to a friend. I said, which ones are the best? And she goes, I really like that one. I said, done. And I was like not going to budge on my subtitle because I really liked it. Mm-hmm. I'm stubborn, just a little bit.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that, how everything came together. And this is something that I really appreciated reading your book, which I highly encourage anyone listening to this to just grab a copy, not only to be able to contribute, right? Because as you're buying the book, you're contributing to the cause, but also to really enrich in your life and start seeing things from a different perspective. And this is what I got out of it. I mean, I got lots of different things out of it, but I really loved a couple things, lots of things, but the fact that you had different lessons that you learned from different people in your life, even the people that weren't the nicest to you, you still were able to find lessons that you learned from those people. So I really love that. And that's something that even though we're reading your story, we're able to start reflecting on our own journey and our own story and thinking, oh yeah, I had that one person in my life that did this, this, and that. It wasn't that great at the time, but it really taught me some valuable things that I still carry on with me from that day. So I really appreciated that. And also how with every situation, which is kind of similar, there was something good to get out of, right? To take from that situation, and how it's not really a linear path. It never is with life. And we tend to insist and think that everything is just, if everything is going well, then that's the life, right? Except this is never going to happen. There's always going to be some bump in the road. And I love one of your catchphrases that your circumstances don't define you, which is really true. Things are going to happen that are out of our control, which are circumstances. But that doesn't mean that we can't turn things around or even find positive things in there. So I really love these elements that you added into that, which makes it for reading somebody else's story so interesting, because it's not just about reading your story. That is amazing and so empowering in itself. It's really about finding those common threads. And we actually did a book club with your book. So that's one of the things, and I even mentioned this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago before we started, that we gathered lots of different women to start reading the book. And I hadn't read the book. So I was reading like a day ahead of everybody. And it was really phenomenal to see the other ladies in the group having similar realizations within their own life, right? But finding those lessons in their life and saying, I really needed to read this. This really helped me right now. I think things are going to change now because I'm becoming more aware. So from my perspective, it was really powerful in that way. And it was interesting to see other women doing it at the same time, reading it at the same time, finding these same valuable lessons through your lessons. So I really appreciated that.
It's time to empower yourself through self-love. If you've been thinking about joining the Empowered Woman School, now is the time. Starting May 1st, we'll be increasing the monthly membership rate to $99. And so for a little over a week, you can enroll for a founding rate of $27 a month. Come join an intimate group of women supporting each other through becoming more intentional and self-confident regardless of adversities. Just go to marchasburke.com.
No, it was wonderful. It was such an honor to really dive in my own story with them, because I could see it from their perspective, their eyes, and how they could relate to me. Like I'd get, a message and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you went through that. Were you getting into my own head? I was like, this is so amazing. Because I think if you look at the different prompts that we went through, that you can see their growth. You can see how they were like, oh, I thought I wasn't ready to bring this up, but it just came up in her story. How does it make me reflect on my own story, and how can I move past it, or how can I grow through it, or, how can I really take the power back for myself? And so I thought that was really interesting, because a lot of people were like, I don't know if I'm ready to read this, specific chapter, because I don't know if I'm ready to dive in that, but they were, and they were just also willing to share and open up. And I think the more people share it, the more they're like, oh, this is a kind and loving and compassionate group of women that are here to support one another. Yes. We're not going to tear each other up, Yeah. I mean, that's why a lot of women don't tell their story. They're afraid that they're going to be torn apart.
Exactly. Because that's usually what happens, right? We are made to feel ashamed of what we went through. And most times it's not things that we could control. And it's always what I always say, we're really taught from a young age to suffer in silence, to just brush things off, to suck it up. And there is no growth in that, because the things are still in there, and pretending that they're not in there doesn't do anybody any good. And so I really appreciated that. And I feel like we had connected well, even before doing the book club, right? We were talking and things, and I really resonated with your message. But I think reading the book really put like the icing on the cake in terms of confirmation that our messages were so aligned, because having the book club really was what I had been doing with the workshops and even with my coaching and everything, which was not only have me up there talking about stuff, but really have this interaction, right? And asking women, how do you feel? What are your thoughts? And having them reflect, because that's what generates growth really, is when you apply that to your life and not just have that idea or saying, oh, that was super an inspirational movie. When we go watch a movie, oh, that's great. That helped me forget my reality for an hour and a half. And then life goes back to normal, quote unquote. Or you go back to your routine and nothing really changes. Whereas if we're committed to answering those questions and really thinking about our life in that context of what we just watched or what we just read, you can start generating some change. And I think because of self-awareness, which is the very first step for me with anything, is acknowledging those feelings, acknowledging that stuff, going back into those stories and asking yourself, wow, what did I really feel? And if I saw that situation when I was a child, now as an adult, I can see things differently. And I can see how that compounded with all the other lessons that I've learned in my life, how that has affected me and all that. And so with that, while we were doing the club and the book club and everything, I thought it would be great, because I'm usually thinking, it would be great for other coaches and stuff to come teach at my school, kind of no strings attached, teach a class, and people can connect with you afterwards. But then after doing all of this and seeing how we're really focusing on women and focusing on personal development, I figured it would be great to have you on board, to come into the school and be one of the instructors, to have this added piece, even though you are doing similar things that I am doing. You have a very different angle, especially, with the domestic abuse situation, and also with your whole story and experience with sports and with being athletic and all of that, which is very different from my journey. And it can really add to other women that maybe have something different, or because people resonate with different people. So with that, I just wanted you to share a little bit more about what you're going to be teaching inside the school. Because with this episode, I wanted to announce that you will be teaching a class this week, and also in the following weeks, as well as you become one of the instructors inside the school. But can you tell us more what you're preparing, and a little bit more about, our ideas of working together in that sense?
Yes. So when I first met Marta in person, first of all, she invited me to one of her events, and I was like, oh, I'm going to try to make it. And so I made it, and I was trying to find parking. And it's a funny story. I have to tell it. So I found parking, I got in, and I'm like getting prepared for class. And there's only like a minute or two remaining before it's supposed to start, before her workshop starts. And I was so like flabbergasted. I don't even know if flabbergasted is the right word. I was just so like, trying to get my coat off and situated. And she comes running over to me and she's like, hi, I'm Marta. And I was like, hi. Completely distracted. And I thought I totally blew having a relationship with you, because I was like, oh, that went really bad. Went through the whole class, and then I gave her feedback at the end because she asked for it. And I was like, I walked out of there and I was just like, oh, Erin, what were you doing? Just totally destroyed that one. And so then she messaged me like a day later or something. It was like, hey, I'm so glad you came to my workshop. And I was like, oh, yes, thank you so much. And I was just trying to play it cool. And then we just hit it off. And so we got together and had coffee, and we hit it off, and we talked about our stories. And you invited me to speak at your workshop, but then the whole COVID-19 thing happened. And so we just started talking on a daily basis. So I really feel that we just we connected on that level that we were supposed to, even though I thought I totally blew it out of, just totally blew it, but I didn't. But I'm really excited that through this whole book club and collaboration and just talking every day, about our frustrations and our successes and what we're doing and what we're not doing and all of that, we've really we've bonded. We've created this, I really believe, this lifelong bond that we'll have, because we do try to empower people, and women especially, so much without being torn down. But then we see the sides where we do get torn down by other women, and we're just like, no, it's not supposed to be that way. Just think about, all the accomplishments that we could accomplish if we were to come together. And, like I said in the book club when we went live on the group, is there's a thread and it weaves between all of us. We just have to figure out what common thread that is and where we fit into each other's, life. Or if you're a sewer, a quilt, where in each other's quilt do we fit? So I'm really excited about the school, because I'm going to really be able to bring the lessons I learned throughout my life, which is obviously laid out in my book, to life. And really get people to dive into the different lessons and different things that I've learned. They've also probably have learned in their life and just don't realize it.
Yeah.
So the first class that I'm teaching, which is this week, is going to be about the foundation and self-aware. It goes into the self-awareness piece of, what's your foundation look like and who laid that foundation for you? Was it you or was it somebody else? What are the seeds that were given? And that's all I'm going to say because I'm really excited and don't want to give too much, but I'm just excited about it because it's an opportunity for me to reach so many more women. It's an opportunity for me to really do the things that I want to do because you already have the platform created.
Yes.
And I just think it's going to be powerful because it's two powerful, badass women that are just like, hey, look, we're from two different worlds, but we have so much in common and we are on the same mission of empowering and changing and making an impact in the world today through our own experiences, but also relating to those other women that just feel a little lost or they're like, hey, wait, I'm ready. I'm ready for, self-development. I'm ready to be empowered and I'm ready to self-love myself and not feel so selfish or guilt, There's a lot of other women, we've been taught, we've been trained, we've been brainwashed to think that we're supposed to tear each other down or we're supposed to compete. And you and I are like, whoa, why can't we do this together and be badasses all the way around? So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. Well, and going back to your story, which you shared not too long ago with me about getting flustered and was like, oh my gosh, I blew it. What is she thinking about me? And I love that you said that because I feel like that's one of the main issues with women is that the tendency that we have of creating stories in our heads and blowing things out of proportion and really, really actually straining relationships and losing opportunities is because we get so fixated into what are they thinking or what is going to happen. And then to see that, we were still be able to connect and to talk. And I believe that because we're in the same wavelength and everything as well, that's helped. But that's one of the things that has made me so passionate about this work is to help women see that we are really so similar and there's no reason. And we're unique, so there's no competition in that sense, but we're so similar that there's no reason for us to tear each other down because we have similar fears and similar concerns. So when we're able to share that and say, oh my gosh, I'm not alone in this, even though I'm so different and I come from a different background, it really helps create that bond and helps you just not feel so alone. So I really love that. And also, for anyone listening to us right now, we're actually going to be doing a Facebook Live on Thursday, so a couple days from now, which is the day that you're teaching in the school. But just to anyone who wants to learn more about Erin, and we'll just talk more about the topic of seeds and the self-awareness. I really love that. I really love the idea of seeds because that's really what our belief system really is these little seeds that we water our entire lives, and we don't even realize that those huge trees of limiting beliefs and things are in our lives and that we can actually take them down if we first acknowledge that they're there and then start making changes. So I think that'll be awesome. And then of course, for whoever wants to learn more from Erin, you're going to have to join the Empowered Women School. And I'll put all the links in the show notes. But basically, if you just go to marchesbrook.com, you will see more information. But I am super excited about all of that. Again, everybody needs to go read your book and I'll put links to that as well. And there's opportunity to sponsor too. I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about the whole sponsoring situation. Because when you buy a book just on its own, you're already, for yourself, right? You're already contributing to the cause, but you have the opportunity to sponsor a book to be sent to shelters all across the United States. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. So it's called Make an Impact in 2020. And so anytime you buy a book for yourself, a portion of that goes to helping those impacted by domestic violence and sexual assault. I pick an organization, I write a check at the end of each quarter. I've decided every quarter is better than every month. That's right. And then Make an Impact started like the last week in December, because I wanted to kind of pre-launch it before 2020. And it's basically you buy a book, so you can either just buy a book, which is $20, or you can buy a book and shipping, and that's $25. Okay. Either way, it doesn't matter. So $20 or $25. I then will take the book and I put a giving back sticker in the front cover. And then I put your name in the book. So I create a little label that says this book is sponsored by, and whatever name you want me to put in it. I then can also include a personal message that you want to put in the book. And then I sign the book. I put a letter with the book and I ship it to a shelter across the country. We have, to this day, Colorado's as of last week, Colorado was fully sponsored. So there's 59 organizations in Colorado, but 32 of those are shelters, and they're all fully sponsored. So that means each shelter has one book in it, one copy of my book in it. So Colorado is completely done. We don't have to worry about Colorado. So yay.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then we have, oh man, I did the math the other day, but I'll have to do it again. But I know that there's 16 or 17 states plus Washington, D.C. that have at least one shelter with one book in it. And we're up to, the last count I did, because I haven't included the 7 I have to ship out today, we're up to 80 books. So that means 80 shelters have a copy of my book across the country. There's over 2,800 shelters or organizations across the United States and Canada, and we're trying to get them completely sponsored by the end of the year. It's a huge goal, but we're on our way. We're at 2.8% right now. And then once I add those 7 books, we'll be over 3%. But I'm really excited because it's a way for people to get involved with Beaten to Badass, a way to give back to people they'll never have, maybe they'll meet them one day. I don't know. But, they can make a big difference, because when a book is sent to a shelter, the staff read it, which is anywhere from 5 to who knows how many people read that book. And then they put it on the shelf, and then they've got, most of them have about 20 or 30 beds in them. So you're talking about 20 or 30 people that could potentially read that book every single month.
Wow.
So they're making a ripple effect. They're making a huge impact, and it's amazing. I'm told when people sponsor a book, they feel like they get more out of it than what they're giving, because it makes them feel so good. And they're like, wow, I'm actually helping someone find their voice again or find strength and courage. And it's just a little contribution that goes a long, long way. I mean, it's endless, because that book's on that shelf for who knows how long. So
yes. Oh, I love how many people you're reaching with this. And it just makes me really happy to have connected with you and to have helped in a way to spread your message, and even more now as we're partnering up. And also with sponsoring a couple books, I decided that I was going to sponsor for a couple of the states that have the largest population of Brazilians. And I have helped some Brazilians in Colorado that came from those states, and they have told me that they had to go to shelters at the time, women that had to go to shelters at the time, even with kids, because of domestic violence. And so I'm excited to be able to help in that way, even if it's small, even if they never know that there was a Brazilian that put that book in there. It definitely makes a difference, I think, emotionally, just like what you were saying, of people saying it feels like it's a lot more than just the money or having the book in there. It's making a difference and making an impact, just like you said. I love that so much. Well, thank you so much, Erin. This was great. I will put all the links in the show notes. And of course, people will be able to find you in the Empowered Women community and inside the Empowered Women School.
Thank you so much, Marta. It's been my pleasure. And I am so excited about the future.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. Don't forget to connect with Erin and get a copy of her book, From Beaten to Badass. All the links are in the show notes. And join us inside the Empowered Women School on Facebook to hear more about our partnership and how to enroll in the Empowered Women School. Until next time, bye.